Well, it has finally happened. UCF has finally won a game in October for the first time in 3 years, beating West Virginia handily, 45-13. We're going to get into all the good, some bad, but all good for the UCF Knights. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Charge On. As always, I am your host, Sean Green, and as always, we are sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, this was the line. UCF was favored by 7.5. We thought it was crazy, but you got that line on FanDuel. They covered it easily. The over, I believe, hit. I'm trying to remember the score right now. 42-13, the over did hit. So you got those lines on FanDuel. Use FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Best lines anywhere through the college football, NBA, NFL season. And they are a proud sponsor of the Charge On podcast. What a game. What a game. It feels good to finally get, I said it on the end of the last pod, that you just needed to win, right? Like for us, we do this, 15 straight weeks or something like that. We do it really every week of the year. But, the last couple of years, it's been draining. And listen, we're not playing football games, so it's less draining than, what the players are doing. But you can imagine, like, losing so many straight games. And this was only a 3-game losing streak, but 3 straight years where it just seemed every time you would hit October, you would hit conference play, stuff would go downhill. Last year, it was really the Florida game, right? You beat TCU, and then you play Florida, you get beat there, then you lose to Cincinnati, and UCF was 3-5 last year. And then they rattled off their 4th win, and we're like, okay, you got a shot, and then it just went downhill. You get your 4th win 7 games into the season, and I think the mindset changes. Granted, we told you going into this game, we said, listen, this is a game you need to win. If you want to play in a bowl game, if your goal is to get to a bowl game, you need to win this game. This is a team that's on the same level as you. Having a new coaching staff, a lot of new players. I said, this is a game that if you don't win this, the likelihood you get to a bowl game is slim to none. You need to win this. And, got to the stadium, did our pregame show, and right as the game started, it looked like UCF was the more dominant and better team by a long shot. Like, frankly, it didn't look relatively close. There was a period, it was 14-7, where you were like, okay. But even then, UCF went for on 4th and 1, didn't get it, giving, West Virginia the ball in their own territory, basically. And West Virginia scored on that. Besides that, the rest of the game, you just felt like UCF was the more dominant physical team in every single aspect. And I said this on our post-game show, which was, you have mediocre, you have average, you have good, and you have great. UCF, if this is mediocre, UCF is so far ahead of mediocre. Like, UNC is mediocre. West Virginia is mediocre. UCF beats up on those teams. The question that they haven't been able to answer yet is against the good teams. Can they get over the hump? But usually average teams against good teams get either blown out or it's not close, or they lose, by a couple touchdowns. UCF is not like that. For average teams, UCF's like right in the middle. You have good, and then there's UCF. And people are asking, people are saying, where is UCF on the scale? I think that's the scale. UCF beats themselves against good teams. Now, granted, the good teams are just better than UCF, and UCF has to basically play a flawless game to beat those type of teams, right? Against a West Virginia team like this, UCF completely dominated. When you get on the schedule and you see a Baylor pop up, and you're like, oh, UCF can win that game. Baylor's the better team. UCF is playing a good Baylor team. UCF would have to play a perfect game and not beat themselves. But it's different from a West Virginia playing a Baylor. Baylor would demolish West Virginia. But when it's UCF, it's like UCF can compete. And that's what I think this game really represents. And we're going to get into the game and everything. But I wanted to stress that I think the positive is Scott Frost has a team that has no business being above or slightly better than average, beating up on a team like this that bad. These are two teams in the same situation. And if you look down the roster, or if you look down at the teams that UCF has beat, who have they beaten? They've beaten mostly teams with a brand new coaching staff and a bunch of new players. That should give you confidence that Scott Frost is ahead of all of the teams with brand new coaches and having to add a bunch of players. And that might not be saying a lot, but it does mean a lot. It means that Scott Frost is ahead of schedule compared to other schools that are going through the same situations. Schools that have had to replace their entire roster. UCF and Scott Frost are ahead because they're beating up on those teams. And today, and I get it, we'll talk about it. West Virginia is basically on a true freshman and redshirt freshman quarterback. So there is that. They have no business throwing the ball on the field. They can't. So that does, help. But at the same time, West Virginia's defense is inept. UCF dominated in all facets of the game. That says everything about Scott Frost and the coaching staff and who they brought in. We started about talking about the defense on the post-game show. We're going to start talking about defense on here. Listen, I want to be devil's advocate. West Virginia's offense listen, they can't throw the ball down the field. I mean, they can't. With Khalil Wilkins and Scotty Fox Jr., they had a combined 79 passing yards, 11 for 28, 79 yards. They just can't throw the ball down the field. And that's West Virginia's problem right now, is unfortunately, they really just don't have a vertical pass game. They don't. But also the problem is then teams know they're just trying to run the ball, and they ran it 49 times for 131 yards for a 2.7 yards per carry average. The defense, listen, at the end of the day, two things can be true. West Virginia's offense, passing, it can be really rough and bad. At the same time, this UCF defense is physical and fast. Defensive line, even with some guys out for the season, looked dominant still. When Wilkins came in for Fox, he had obviously a couple nice runs, got a touchdown, but after that, there was no business with him being out on the field with them. The defense was not really going to allow anything. The third down comparison, West Virginia was 3 of 17 on third down. 3 of 17. That is a credit to the defense. That is a credit to how they played. It's a credit to Alex Grinch. Like, if you look down and you look at these games for UCF on defense, listen, they're not perfect. And I've been on record. I'm not going to switch that up. Like, again, against Cincinnati. And I think Scott Frost was the first one to say it. Like, the defense is good, but they have a chance to be great. Because even against Cincinnati, you allow like 2 big plays, and that's really the difference in the game. Right? Against Kansas State, you had 2 really exceptional quarters, but the other 2 you gave up too much. Right? Kansas, I thought they played pretty well. I can't really fault the defense, but that's what I'm saying. Even against some of the best offenses in the Big 12, UCF is not giving up much. And when you play an offense like West Virginia today, you just saw how they could feast. We said West Virginia is going to want to run the football. They don't have a passing game. But even when you knew that they wanted to run the football, UCF stopped it. UCF demolished it. Got them in a lot of third down scenario situations. They had 7 sacks and 8 tackles for a loss. It's incredible. Strictly incredible. Like, to rush for 49, them rushing 49 times for only 131 yards. And yes, they had 2 touchdowns, but again, the one at the end of the game was ridiculous because it was Brock Hansel throwing the pick, got him to the 1-yard line. And then the other one was the Wilkins touchdown, but that was also just UCF not being able to get a yard on offense, which we'll talk about that. But you had the defensive touchdown, strip sack defensive touchdown by Kelly Lawson. Cole Kozlowski. Well, I have to look at the defensive stats. Cole Kozlowski, 11 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Exceptional. Nigel Lee Kelly, 1 sack, 1.5 tackles for loss, 1 pass breakup, 1 forced fumble. The corners played really good today. John Walker, I think, showed up. John Walker, obviously, I think he's had a quiet season, but his PFF grades are incredible. But you don't really say John Walker's name. He had a good game today. The defensive line specifically has just been really good this season. And I think if you keep Alex Grinch, which we're all assuming Alex Grinch is going to be your defensive coordinator next year, if everything goes well, I think the defense is something that you can look at as a UCF fan and think if the offense can get consistent, if the offense can stay consistent and kind of just keep taking leaps and steps, even just this season, but heading into next season, man, you're looking at a very complete UCF team that can compete in this league. Because if you can have a defense that's that good, it's going to help your offense. And again, you do have to look at the opponent, and West Virginia's offense is rough. But at the same time, this defense, if you put up last season's defense to this season, I think West Virginia scores more today and gives up more. But great performance by the defense. Offensively, we'll start with Taven Jackson. Taven, obviously, you could tell he is playing injured. Not that his play dictated it, but wasn't trying to really run too much, was trying to avoid getting hit. The shoulder, I think he had a separated shoulder. We don't really know, but, I think Taven is a dog. I mean, he is. He had a really good first half. Second half, not so much, but he didn't really need to. They had some big plays. The game was over within the first 5 minutes of the third quarter because you had the long run by Jaden Nixon and you had the strip sack, fumble recovery by Kelly Lawson to make it a 28-7 game. So the game was semi-over. Taven Jackson was 23 of 34 for 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. The interception, he threw a 50-50 ball to Waden. I felt like Waden might have stopped a little bit. Could have been overthrown. I think that, again, just, could have been better there. But, again, you're picking at straws at this point. They had 578 yards of total offense. And, 323 passing yards. Davi Belfort got in the game. He was really good, too, for 335 yards and ran for a touchdown on, again, they got on the 1 yard line, try to get cute because they kind of need to. But a couple plays didn't work, backed them up to like a 3rd and 9, and he ran it in for the touchdown. Brock cancel. I'm glad he got in the game, but, I'm sure the defense was a little annoyed. They had West Virginia at 7 points, and now it looks a little bit better. But, look, Taven, I always was confused when people were giving Taven flack after the Kansas game, because I'm like, what are we doing? Like, we know Taven is the guy. We know Taven, there should be no reason why we should start questioning that and questioning, she can't. So I didn't really understand that. I think this just further cements that. Taven is the best thrower of the ball on this UCF team, even playing injured. Taven manages the offense the best. The rest of the season should be dedicated to seeing if Taven should be the guy next year. Like, that's ultimately what it is. And let's be frank, I mean, Taven is not just going to get the starting job heading into next year. Now, granted, if he goes on a, 5-game win streak or 6-game win streak, wins out the rest of the season, then sure, you give him the starting job. But no, I think Taven is a good quarterback. I think he reads the game the right way. And he had a hell of a game today. He managed the game in a way that he needed to. And he played exceptional. I did jinx him. I thought he was going to get 300 yards passing. They didn't need to in the second half. Again, the game was pretty much done. And you got to take him out early and get him kind of some rest before that bye week. Let's talk about the running game. Because in our post-game live stream, we had some people saying, here, the run game. The run game. If you watch the game, you will realize that the run game is still not where it needs to be. And Scott Frost talked about it in his post-game press conference. I listened to it on the way home, where he said, the big plays are there, and we just need to figure out our short yardage, and there are holes from the offensive line that they're creating, that was last week, but the running backs didn't run through them. But the big plays are because they're able to get to the second level, which I don't disagree with. The issue is, yes, and Scott Frost even said, you have to be able to, we want to rely on it more. Yes, they want to be able to pick up 4 or 5 yards a carry to make short, a 2nd and 5 and not a 3rd and 9 or a 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, right? That's kind of the problem. And yes, UCF does hit big plays. They don't hit them every game, though. And that's the problem. You would have loved to hit a big play against Cincinnati, right? Well, they didn't. And that's where a short yardage run game, being able to pick up 4 to 5 yards a carry consistently, would help your offense tremendously. And I don't think it's just the offensive line. I think we've been very critical of the offensive line. The offensive line played exceptional today. Listen, we said, and you give credit where credit is due. We said the offensive line, specifically the last couple of weeks, they get past the 50-yard line and they kind of hurt the offense with a hold or a false start, chop block, whatever it is. The offensive line really has hurt UCF. And in the run game, I said there's no holes. You watch Miles and he's bouncing back and forth. The offensive line played exceptional today. And I do think that the running backs, there are holes at some times. Now, it's not all the time, and that's kind of the issue. UCF, again, had an issue today. They had a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1. Didn't get it. Another 3rd and 1, another 4th and 1. Didn't get it. That is the biggest issue. It is going to lose UCF. It has already lost UCF a game against Kansas. That lost them the game. They could have at least gone to overtime. They couldn't because they couldn't get a yard. Today, 2 drives where they were moving the ball and then they had a yard to get, and they couldn't get it in 2 tries and then another 2 tries. That is something that, listen, at the end of the day, you are who you are. I don't think UCF is going to be able to magically wake up and be able to run the football consistently for 200 yards. But they need to figure out the short yardage. How do we get a yard when we need it? And listen, probably normally they'd have Taven just run up the gut and do a quarterback sneak. But because he's injured, they're not going to put him at risk. And yes, I think once Jakari gets healthy, those 1-yard situations definitely become a little bit easier because you'll just put Jakari in. But you need to be able to get that with your running backs. So I think that's something that if I was UCF, I would strongly recommend figuring that out ASAP. And I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're working on ways to get that yard on the goal line or get that yard on 1st down or 3rd down and 4th down. It just needs to be more consistent because you're about to face some better teams, much better competition than you have right now. And when you need those short yardage situations, teams know, hey, they're going to try this. It's probably not going to work, though, because they don't really get it very often. So that's something that has been a challenge. But then, again, credit to the run game today. Listen, at the end of the day, was it as efficient as you would like? No. But Jay Nixon had a long run. 7 rushes for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miles Montgomery, 14 carries, 88 yards. Again, some of that is very, very skewed. He had 2 big runs, and the rest were, a yard here, a yard there. So that's where you kind of look at it and say, the stat line looks better than it actually did. Davi Belfort, 5 carries, 30 yards for his 1 series. AJ Adaye, 4 carries, 14 yards. The true freshman looked good. So the run game, still leaves a lot to be desired, but it is hard given that they did run for 255 yards. But I think the consistency factor is what we kind of need. UCF receiving, again, a lot of guys caught a ball today. Chris Domerkamp's probably the MVP today. 5 carries, 89 yards, had the 2 touchdowns in that first quarter there. Again, he's kind of come on as of late. Dwayne Thomas, 4 catches, 44 yards on 8 targets. It didn't feel like he got 8 targets. Wayden Charles, 3 catches for 40 yards. Good day by Wayden. Offensively, all around, to have 578 yards of total offense. 3rd down was a little bit of a struggle. 5 of 16 on 3rd down. Didn't feel that bad. But to get that many guys involved, which has been kind of the theme of UCF from passing the ball, where any guy can get it. They don't have a really true number 1. They don't really have a true number 2. They have a bunch of guys that can probably get the ball. You put up almost 600 yards of offense is good, especially in league play. It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Even though it is one of the worst in the Big 12, you still had to do it. You still had to execute. So it was impressive. Fans showed up today. I was a little nervous. I did put out a premature tweet, which granted that tweet was like 4 minutes before kickoff, so I thought it wasn't premature. But as we all know, UCF fans show up a little bit late, and they showed up. And I do not fault the fans for leaving a little early. It was a blowout. They didn't leave right at halftime. The one end zone did, which it always does, and it's kind of annoying, but credit to the south end zone, I believe it is. They stuck out basically the entire game until the fourth quarter. I'm proud of the crowd. I'm proud of the crowd. They stayed for the most part, so I'm happy about that. Moving forward, what can this UCF team do? What was was there any negatives besides the run game? Not really anything. This team did what they needed, and it shows you just how much better in a spot UCF is from a team like West Virginia. Now, again, I get it. They've dealt with some injuries. We've dealt with some injuries. I mean, we played our fourth and fifth quarterback. Granted, that was just because we needed to or we didn't need to, but the game was out of reach. But I get it. Everybody's in a different situation, and I think West Virginia will get back on track. I truly do. But I think you can be excited for the rest of the season. I'm not saying, listen, at the end of the day, you need 2 wins. You need 2 wins. You should have a win. Like, Oklahoma State should just be a win. Oklahoma State, in my opinion, is worse than West Virginia, and that's saying something. So, I mean, you should be able to have 5 wins up to this point. So you need to beat either Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, and what's the last one? Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, and Baylor. Though you need to find 1 win there. Houston looks much better. You are at home. It is space game, but I don't like to use that excuse. I get it's like an easy thing to be like, space game. At the end of the day, though, crazier things have happened. You need to find 1 other win, and then you get to a bowl game, and then we can have some fun. But incredible win. Good to be 4-3 heading into the bye week. Over 500 heading into the bye week. Get some guys healthy. Get some stuff right. And then finish out the season very strong and potentially, hopefully, go to a bowl game. I want to go to a bowl game. Obviously, I haven't gone to the bowl game since Gasparilla in 2023. I want to go to a bowl game. I don't care where it is. But to get this team an extra game, to get Scott Frost a bowl game to coach him would be absolutely huge. So that's, again, you need to find 2 wins on the schedule. 2 out of your last 5, which is still challenging. Don't get me wrong, but I think this team can do it. And we'll kind of talk about that on this week's episode of Charge On that we'll be dropping on Friday. We'll be going through the rest of the schedule, kind of gauge the temperature, if you will, on UCF and the rest of the season. But we will go through all of that and their bowl aspirations on Friday. All right, buddy, that's going to do it for this episode of Charge On. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Do all that you do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you like that we drop right after the game, subscribe, send it to your friends. We are posting immediately. It's not always good to be fast. It's good to be accurate. But in this case, it helps to be fast. You get content quickly, and I can go to sleep at a reasonable hour. But thank you so much for tuning in as always. And as always, we're sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, be on the lookout. UCF is going to be on a bye this week, so no UCF line for a game. But listen, you still want to bet on college football. You want to still bet on NBA, that's coming up, and then NFL. So use FanDuel, the best lines out there, as you guys know, America's #1 sport. Guys, UCF beats West Virginia 45-13. UCF goes to 4-3 as they head into the bye week. This has been Charge On, presented by FanDuel. We will see you next week.